Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, came out yesterday on Netflix. And of course, we watched it here at the channel in order to give a review. My name is John Delarose. I am a science fiction author with over 20 novels made. And of course, several different graphic novels as well. You can check those out in my links in the description below. If you like my review, I definitely think it'd be great if you'd subscribe to the channel, hang out with us here, and talk science fiction, comics, and other pop culture items. Really appreciate you being there. So this was about 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It is Zack Snyder's, of course, pitch to Disney to make a Star Wars movie. They declined him, and he did something else. It opens up with like an opening sort of montage where you're watching like the fleet stuff going on and a talk over it rather than the scrolling down like Star Wars does. But it sets up the background, so you kind of know that like there's this big galactic imperium sort of thing, and the king died, and of course his family did so too, and there's no heirs, and now kind of some bad people seem to be taking things over. Meanwhile, people on the fringes and all that are kind of not liking what's going on and kind of trying to do their own thing. As we go across things, the world building's kind of weird. You do see that there's like different people who are princes or kings of different planets who seem to have some autonomy, but they kind of know there's this empire out there, and when they show up, it's like, oh, hi, yeah, we're totally on your side. And of course, the people running the fleet and all that are super bad guys. They are, worse than Darth Vader. I mean, they are just aggressive for the sake of being aggressive as we get into this. After that little opening kind of crawl bit, it just goes and focuses in on Cora, our farmer. So she's a alleged farmer, and she's been in this like village on this area for like 2 years. And so what happens is she's been farming, becoming part of the community. They've got some stuff. They actually gave some of their wares to budding resistance, and they're worried about it because the fleet's showing up in this like big giant carrier called the King's Gate is flying overhead, and they are going to station some troops there, and they're demanding that they actually produce more grain than they have, and that they'll be giving that to the fleet rather than themselves. And they're like, hey, we're going to starve for that. So, of course, in a show of force, the bad guys kill the village leader brutally. The main guy just has this like big stick, and he just bashes people's heads in. And as we see things going along here, we get a little robot that shows up, and he's, a background part of this. And this is what happens with the Zack Snyder film here and a lot of Zack Snyder films. There's just a ton of characters introduced, and then a lot doesn't happen with them, and you don't really get much of them. This robot here that's kind of just sitting in the field that you can barely see is like supposed to be a pacifist. He's not supposed to be able to fight against like the king or whatnot. And so the soldiers kind of mistreat it, and what happens is there's one scene where this robot actually fires back against the soldiers. It makes it kind of look like an accident, and then it runs off, and that's all that it does. And it's like there's no background to it, there's no development to it, you don't learn much about it. And this is just like the MO of all these characters. There's so many freaking characters that get introduced. Some of them have arcs, some of them don't, and some of them just are along for the ride. It's very bizarre on this front. So it does mostly focus on Cora. Now Cora decides to kind of come out and help out. There's a man in the village who loves her, who wants to save the village, and her and him take off on an adventure to try to like find a rebellion to help them train their villagers up to fight against the evil empire here. And so she goes off with him, and they set off to another town, and this is where it kind of like goes off the rails a little bit. They meet up with, I'm trying to find an image of it here, this guy right here, in a bar fight, and he's supposed to be your Han Solo. You see all the beats of Star Wars hitting on this. They're on a moon. There's planet killers. They're razing planets to the ground, in the name of their bad empire. And of course, they're getting their budding resistance going. That's really not even going to have a shot because they're so small. It just feels like the same sort of beats. Now, there's like some sort of forcey kind of fight here where it's like They slow down the fights, like she's got some sixth sense or something like that. And this is Zack Snyder doing his slow mo stuff. So all the battles end up with this like big slow motion sort of thing in it, which, I mean, it looks kind of cool at points, and it's kind of like slows down the movie at other points. So it's like it's got benefits and drawbacks to it. And in this one in particular, they go and of course pick up this guy who for some reason just helps them, and they just accept that he's just going to help them. And he's going to take them on his ship and gather some great rebel forces. And they're like, yay. With very little background given to him, nothing really about him. And this is the problem with the movie. It ends up being go to planet, pick up guy, go on to the next planet, pick up guy. And as they do this, like it's like there's no reason or rhyme for them picking up the guy. He's just being part of the team. He doesn't give a reason to be a part of the team. They just want to be a part of the team. And it's nonsensical a lot of the ways. They really did not explain this well enough. Like if you look at Star Wars by contrast, like Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan really have to barter with Han Solo and actually like promise him reward from a princess. You're going to get paid big on the other side. They give him motivation to do so. And of course, that's where when everybody joins together, like the motivations are very clear of the characters. None of these characters' motivations are clear whatsoever, except for the main guy who's following Korra around because it's his village, right? Now, Korra's got a history and a past, and I should say that we're going to have a bunch of spoilers of this. I mean, obviously, I've just opened up the beginning of the film. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and it feels really long because it slows down at a lot of points. The pacing is just like abysmal on this entire deal. And of course, like the lack of character, lack of motivations is also abysmal on this front. And so this is some rough work where it's tough because at this point you don't care that much about the characters. There's a couple you do care about. I guess Korra, you get enough of a background to kind of care about her. And she ends up being the strong female lead that is just in every film these days, where she's 120 pounds, but for some reason she's just better and she's worth like 100 soldiers. They can all just throw themselves at her and she will just kill all of them in like with ease, right? And so sick of that trope. It just is really sad. Now in this one, she's just trained as a soldier, so she's just good at being a soldier. There's no reference to force powers or anything like that, but it does kind of like allude to the fact that there's something mysterious going on, because there was this like princess who was apparently slaughtered with the king and queen, who had some sort of magical powers, or so she thought. That's just talked about like it was a legend or something like that. So it's alluded to that these things happen. We do get lightsabers eventually, kind of. They're kind of different looking. They look cool. As they pick up another lady who just is a really expert swords lady, who's a better fighter than all the soldier men also for some reason. And that seems to the trend here. All the diversity women are just better fighters than the men on the other side, who are all, ripped, like roided out white men who look like literal Yahtzees, right? And so this guy picks them up, and there's a little twist at the end. Again, like this guy's motivation and talk and like is never foreshadowed and never cleared in this. So even though this guy does have an arc, whereas at the end of it, he ends up betraying them, and he's not Han Solo. He's actually a really bad guy, and he's working for the other bad guys. So he does twist, so it's not an exact copy of Star Wars, but that is it. And then what happens is, of course, Korra ends up killing him in that fight. So picking people up along the way. This is Zack Snyder promises is a non-binary heart of the story. This person shows up like late in the film and is actually just a recruit of some guy who is like leading a rebellion, and he dies helping and save everybody. And then this person joins the ragtag band, but gets zero story arc. And you're supposed to like, you see her, they calling, crying and stuff at the end and like wanting revenge and stuff like that. And you're supposed to like really care about it, but because you never got any information about this person, you just don't care. And that's the standard thing that happens here. Now, again, I'm very sure that over the next film, this lady is going to be shown to be like non-binary or trans or something like that. That seems to be what Zack Snyder's hinting at towards this, which is going to be very cringy. This guy shows up right here. He's a prince, without a world or something like that, and he was enslaved. And we see a little arc where it like, visually you see some cool stuff with him. Again, there's just like no real reason for him to want to be with the party and be a part of this. Here's our bad guy, who's of course the literal, in this front. So it's just got trope after trope. And here we are. This guy's a general, and he's just fighting in an arena. And she just kind of coaxes him to join this new rebellion for revenge against the Imperium on this front. So they just pick up all these people along the way, and it's just like beat after beat of just picking up people on random planets until they show up at a spot where they believe they're going to be picking up and dropping off some cargo from the mercenary guy. And it turns out he sold them all out, and they have an epic knockdown, drag out fight at the end where Korra pretty much kills the main bad guy who's running the fleet. It's just they kind of revive him, and then he jacks into some like cyberpunky looking net, and the bad guy who's really in charge of things is revealed at the very end, who ends up being Korra's adoptive father within the sort of empire. So he's the main bad guy that they're actually going to have to face. This guy is just kind of the Darth Vader acolyte, except for there's a different relationship between him, like between Vader and the Emperor. Like this guy who's in charge is much more to the fleet admiral. You better do this or I'm going to kill you. You're going to be the one who with the head on your pike. So he has much more of an adversarial sort of relationship rather than Vader and the Emperor, which was like a training master sort of thing. So again, the characterization's just like, it makes it tough to watch because there's just too much going on. It's very over the top, like gory. So Zack Snyder's really pushing the limits. I know they put it at PG-13 and there's supposed to be a rated R version, which I'll talk about in just a second. The visuals look really good. Like the little lightsabers, like he did a cool job with that to make them look unique and different. The little energy beams. And of course, ship designs and all that look cool. Everything looks cool. The planets look awesome. You actually have one point where you've got this like Jupiter sort of like just really in your face, like in the sky. And it looks really, really great. Really neat, cool sci-fi settings overall. Everything's dark, which adds to a little bit of a problem because it starts to get a sameness because nothing changes in terms of like the lighting scope. It just ends up being completely dark all the way around, like a lot of modern sci-fi. I kind of hate that about modern sci-fi. If you look at Star Wars, the bright colors and the different colors, the different coloring schemes, depending on where they were at, really just set the scene to make the planets feel a lot different. So even though there were different things here, we had one with like almost like eclipsed sun. We had one with like the Jupiter thing, like I said. But since they're all kind of dark, they all kind of felt the same in a lot of ways. There's also a bunch of aliens out there, and it's not explained anything about them. Like they just kind of show up about halfway through the movie, and you kind of just start seeing some weird alien stuff like as the film goes along. And there's like a whole king like with his whole culture that they show up in one of their events, and he gets slaughtered. But you just like don't learn much about them, and again, just don't have a reason to care about them because like the galaxy is really not defined very well in that level. So that's the main problem is pacing and no motivations for the characters. Just make this a film that just like event after event happen. It's just sequence to sequence to where you're just seeing here's a cool new visual, here's a cool new visual, here's a cool new visual. Oh, look, a new character. And there's just like an excess of all this stuff, making it look like something that just really isn't leading anywhere. Of course, at the end of it, after the fight, they kind of go back to the village, and kind of they've got their band of heroes now to set up for the next thing. Since the guy came back, he's going to hunt them down, and they're going to have another part 2, which is going to supposedly have the big confrontation at this rebel moon, I assume, because that's what the movie's called. And that's it. And so it just stops, right? So it feels kind of like a complete movie, but it also feels like a complete episode rather more than a complete movie. It's not as bad as a lot of the to be continued sort of films I've been seeing, like the new Fast and the Furious or like the Spider-Verse this last year. But it definitely did not feel complete on that level. Now, of course, Netflix is already doing the like, oh, there's a Snyder director cut that really explains all the characters, right? And this is exactly what was done with Justice League. They're like, oh, you need all this background. Like the characters just showed up. It's the same problems of that film. And they're saying if they just tack on another hour of footage to it, that's going to fix the film. I don't think that's going to help. It's going to like kill the film's pacing even more, which already felt really long as it was. And so you get this 3-hour movie at this point, you're just going to have some sort of ridiculous indulgence thing where it's just like, wow, again, just like the Snyder cut of Justice League. So this is a failure of a narrative on every level, unfortunately. It's got all the elements where it could have been good. He just needed like a real writer to kind of fix things and patch things together to where you'd actually care about what's happening and going on. And that is the problem with Rebel Moon. So overall, I call this movie, like, the effects are pretty, the directing looks pretty. Like, I mean, yes, the slow motion was overused, like everything was overdone. It seems like in this movie, but all that looks kind of nice. So I mean, at least you had that for a little bit of entertainment value over the course of a couple hours, but the storyline really just wasn't there. And so I call this a 5 out of 10 overall. And of course, part 2 will be coming out in April. Maybe they claim it's going to fix things. We'll see. Leave a comment down below with what you think about this. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.